Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The rusty metal doors of the docking bay hissed open, revealing the bustling interior of Omega Station. Captain Edward Reeves stepped off the boarding ramp of his freighter, the Adventurer, and inhaled deeply. The recycled air carried the unmistakable scent of machine oil, cheap liquor, and desperation. "Home sweet home," he muttered, adjusting his worn leather jacket. Edward's first mate, a burly Martian named Gruck, lumbered down the ramp behind him. "Captain, we've got 2 hours before the refueling's complete. What's the plan?" "Same as always," Edward replied, his eyes scanning the crowded docking bay. "Resupply, maybe grab a drink and try not to get into any trouble." Gruck snorted. "When have we ever managed that last part?" Edward grinned. "First time for everything, big guy." As they made their way through the station's winding corridors, Edward couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The usual hustle and bustle of Omega seemed subdued, the air thick with tension. "You feel that?" he asked Gruck. The Martian nodded, his red eyes narrowing. "Something's going down. Best we steer clear, Captain." But Edward's curiosity got the better of him. He followed the flow of the crowd, ignoring Gruck's grumbling protests. The mass of bodies led them to a large, dimly lit chamber. At its center stood a raised platform, surrounded by a throng of rough-looking characters. "Shit," Edward hissed. "It's a slave auction." Gruck grabbed his arm. "We should go. Now." Edward was about to agree when a hush fell over the crowd. He craned his neck to see what had caused the sudden silence. That's when he saw her. A young woman was led onto the platform, her wrists bound with energy cuffs. But it wasn't her restraints that caught Edward's attention. It was her skin, a deep, mesmerizing shade of blue that seemed to shimmer in the low light. Her features were startlingly human, yet there was an otherworldly beauty to her that took his breath away. "Holy hell," he whispered. The auctioneer, a greasy-looking Venusian, began his spiel. "Ladies and gentlemen, feast your eyes on this rare specimen, a genuine Neotronian princess sold by her own father to cover his gambling debts. Imagine the prestige of owning royalty." Edward's stomach churned. The woman's eyes, a brilliant amber, darted around the room, filled with fear and desperation. When her gaze met his, he felt a jolt of electricity run through him. "Starting bid is 50,000 credits," the auctioneer bellowed. Without thinking, Edward raised his hand. 100,000! Groke's massive palm clamped down on his shoulder. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed. Edward shrugged him off. "I don't know, but I can't just stand here and do nothing." The bidding war escalated quickly. Edward's heart raced as he pushed the limits of the adventurer's finances. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he heard the sweet sound of victory. "Sold to the gentleman in the leather jacket for 500,000 credits." As the crowd dispersed, grumbling about the unexpected competition, Edward made his way to the platform. The blue-skinned woman regarded him warily as he approached. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you. What's your name?" She hesitated before answering. "Tyrus." Edward smiled. "I'm Edward, Captain Edward Reeves, and I'm here to set you free." Tyrus's eyes widened. "Free? But why?" "Because slavery is wrong no matter what planet you're from," Edward replied, deactivating her energy cuffs. "Come on, let's get out of here before someone changes their mind." As they hurried back to the Adventurer, Gruck fell into step beside them. "Captain, this is insane. We can't afford—" "We'll figure it out," Edward cut him off. "Right now, let's just focus on getting back to the ship." Once safely aboard, Edward led Tyrus to the common area. The rest of the crew, a motley assortment of humans and aliens, gathered around, eyeing the newcomer with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "All right, everyone, Edward announced. "This is Tyrus. She'll be joining us well, for as long as she wants to stay." A chorus of murmurs filled the room. Tyrus shifted uncomfortably, her skin taking on a faint purple hue. Edward raised an eyebrow. "Does your skin always do that?" Tyrus nodded. "It changes with my emotions. Right now, I'm uncertain." "Fascinating," Edward mused. He turned to address the crew. "Look, I know this is unexpected, but Tyrus needs our help. She's been through hell, and we're going to give her a safe place to stay. Any objections?" The crew exchanged glances, but no one spoke up. Finally, Grok sighed heavily. "Well, I suppose we could use another pair of hands around here. What can you do, Princess?" Tyrus straightened her shoulders. "I am skilled in diplomacy, fluent in 12 languages, and have extensive knowledge of interstellar trade routes." Edward grinned. "Sounds like you'll fit right in. Welcome aboard the Adventurer, Tyrus." As the crew dispersed to prepare for departure, Edward noticed Tyrus's skin shift to a soft pink. "Let me guess. Relief?" She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "And gratitude. I don't know how to thank you, Captain Reeves." "Edward," he corrected. "And you don't have to thank me. Just promise me you'll tell me your story when you're ready." Tyrus's eyes met his, and for a moment, Edward felt that electric connection again. "I promise," she said softly. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as the Adventurer left Omega Station and set course for their next delivery. Edward found himself constantly distracted by Tyrus's presence. She integrated herself into the crew seamlessly, her intelligence and work ethic quickly earning the respect of even the most skeptical members. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Cultural misunderstandings led to some interesting situations. One morning, Edward entered the mess hall to find Tyrus engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument with the ship's cook, a crusty old Earthman named Hank. "I'm telling you, it's not sanitary," Hank bellowed, waving a spatula in the air. Tyrus's skin had turned a vibrant orange. "And I'm telling you, it's a perfectly normal Neotronian greeting." Edward stepped between them. Whoa, what's going on here?" Hank pointed an accusing finger at Tyrus. "She licked my face, said it was some kind of hello on her planet. Well, I don't care if she's royalty or not, that ain't happening on my watch." Edward bit back a laugh. "Tyrus, is this true?" She nodded, her skin fading to a sheepish yellow. "On Neotron, it's considered polite to share pheromones upon first meeting. I forgot it might not be the same here." Edward ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, new rule. No licking crew members without express permission. Deal?" Tyrus nodded solemnly while Hank grumbled and returned to his cooking. As they left the mess hall, Edward couldn't help but chuckle. "You know, most people just shake hands when they meet someone new." Tyrus tilted her head. "Shake hands? What purpose does that serve?" "You know, I'm not entirely sure," Edward admitted. "But here, I'll show you." He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Tyrus placed her slender blue fingers in his. The contact sent a shiver down Edward's spine. "Like this," he said, gently shaking her hand. "See? Easy and lick-free." Tyrus's skin shifted to a warm gold color. "I like it," she said softly. "It's intimate, in its own way." Edward suddenly realized he was still holding her hand. He cleared his throat and quickly let go. "Right, well, glad we got that sorted out. I should, get back to the bridge." As he turned to leave, Tyrus called out, "Edward." He looked back. "Yeah?" "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Edward felt his face grow warm. "Any time, Princess." Over the next few weeks, Tyrus's presence on the Adventurer led to a series of amusing incidents. Her telepathic abilities, while usually kept in check, occasionally slipped, leading to some awkward moments. During a routine maintenance check, Grok was deep in concentration, trying to recalibrate a finicky fuel injector. Tyrus walked by and suddenly blurted out, "You should use the sonic spanner, not the laser wrench." Grok nearly dropped his tools. "How did you—" "I didn't say that out loud." Tyrus's skin flushed a deep indigo. "I'm so sorry. Sometimes thoughts just slip through. I'll try to be more careful." Edward, who had witnessed the exchange, couldn't help but laugh. "Looks like we've got our own personal mind reader on board. Could come in handy during poker night." Tyrus looked horrified. "I would never use my abilities to cheat." "Relax, I'm just teasing," Edward assured her. "But maybe we should stick to charades for game night just to be safe." As the days passed, Edward found himself growing more and more intrigued by Tyrus. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met, brilliant, compassionate, and with a dry wit that often caught him off guard. One evening, he found her in the ship's small observation deck staring out at the stars. Her skin was a deep, melancholy blue. "Credit for your thoughts?" he asked, settling into the seat beside her. Tyrus sighed. "I was just thinking about home, about my father and how he—" She trailed off, her skin darkening further. Edward felt a surge of anger. "How he sold you like property." She nodded. "I keep trying to understand why. Was I such a disappointment? Did he ever really love me?" Without thinking, Edward reached out and took her hand. "Hey, look at me." Tyrus turned, her amber eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Your father's actions say everything about him and nothing about you," Edward said firmly. "You're amazing, Tyrus. Smart, kind, funny as hell when you're not even trying to be. Any father would be lucky to have you as a daughter." A small smile tugged at Tyrus's lips, and her skin lightened to a soft lavender. "Thank you, Edward. I'm beginning to think I'm the lucky one, though. Finding you, finding this ship and this crew, it feels like fate." Edward felt his heart skip a beat. "Yeah, well, the adventurer has a way of collecting strays and misfits. You fit right in." Tyrus laughed, a sound that sent warmth spreading through Edward's chest. "I'll take that as a compliment, Captain." As they sat there, watching the stars streak by, Edward realized he was in dangerous territory. He was falling for Tyrus, hard and fast, and judging by the way her skin had taken on a rosy hue, he suspected the feeling might be mutual. But there were complications. Cultural differences, her royal background, the trauma she'd been through. Not to mention the fact that he was her rescuer. The last thing he wanted was for her to feel obligated or indebted to him. Still, as Tyrus's head came to rest on his shoulder, Edward couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, they could navigate this uncharted territory together. The calm moment was shattered by the blaring of alarms. Edward jumped to his feet, adrenaline surging. "What's happening?" Tyrus asked, her skin paling to a light blue. "Nothing good," Edward replied grimly. "Come on, let's get to the bridge." As they raced through the corridors, Edward's mind whirled with possibilities. Pirates? Meteor shower? Engine failure? Whatever it was, he had a sinking feeling that their troubles were just beginning. But with Tyrus by his side and his loyal crew at the ready, Edward was prepared to face whatever the universe threw their way. After all, that's what life on the Adventurer was all about. The bridge of the Adventurer erupted into chaos as Edward and Tyrus burst through the doors. Alarms blared and the main view screen flickered with static. "Report!" Edward barked, sliding into the captain's chair. Groke's massive fingers flew over his console. "Picking up multiple bogies, Captain. Look like Scarlet Corsair ships." Edward cursed under his breath. The Scarlet Corsairs were notorious pirates, known for their ruthlessness and advanced technology. "How many?" 3 interceptors and 1 frigate, Gruck replied grimly. Tyrus gripped the back of Edward's chair, her skin a pale, anxious blue. What do they want? Nothing good, Edward muttered. He hit the ship-wide comm. All hands, battle stations, this is not a drill. The adventurers shuddered as the first volley of enemy fire struck their shields. Edward's mind raced, searching for a way out of this mess. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Grok, what's our cargo? The Martian checked his manifest. Rare Centaurian crystals, worth a fortune on the black market. Edward nodded grimly. That's what they're after. Tyrus, any chance you can… I don't know. Read their minds or something? She shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. My abilities don't work at this distance. I'm sorry, Edward. He reached back and squeezed her hand. Don't apologize. We'll figure this out. Another blast rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. Shields at 60% and dropping, Grok reported. Edward's mind whirled. They were outgunned and outnumbered. Running wasn't an option. The Corsair ships were faster. Fighting would be suicide. That left only one choice. Open a channel, he ordered. Tyrus's eyes widened. You're not thinking of surrendering. Edward flashed her a roguish grin. Not exactly. Just trust me. The view screen crackled to life, revealing the sneering face of a scarred human woman. Well, if it isn't the famous Captain Reeves, caught with your pants down, eh? Edward leaned forward, projecting an air of calm he didn't feel. Captain Blackheart, always a pleasure. What say we discuss this like civilized folks? Blackheart laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Civilized? You're hauling enough Centaurian crystal to buy a small moon. Hand it over and maybe we'll let you live. Counteroffer, Edward said smoothly. You let us go, and I don't activate the dead man's switch that'll blow this whole shipment to atoms. Blackheart's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Edward shrugged. Maybe. But are you willing to take that chance? Those crystals are worthless as space dust. A tense silence stretched between them. Edward held his breath, praying his gambit would work. Finally, Blackheart snarled. Fine. You win this round, Reeves, but watch your back. Next time, we won't be so lenient. The transmission cut off, and the enemy ships began to retreat. The bridge erupted into cheers, but Edward didn't relax until the Corsairs vanished from their sensors. He slumped in his chair, exhaling slowly. That was too damn close. Tyrus laid a hand on his shoulder, her skin a warm, admiring gold. That was brilliant, Edward, but there was no dead man's switch, was there? He grinned up at her. Nope. Sometimes the best weapon is a good bluff. As the adrenaline faded, Edward realized how close they'd come to disaster. He needed a drink, or 10. Grok, set a course for Outpost 12, he ordered. I think we all deserve a little shore leave. The crew's enthusiasm was palpable as they docked at Outpost 12, a bustling space station known for its diverse attractions. Edward gave them strict instructions to be back in 48 hours, then turned to Tyrus. Care to join me for a drink, Princess? He asked, offering his arm with an exaggerated flourish. Tyrus laughed, linking her arm with his. I thought you'd never ask, Captain. They found a cozy bar tucked away in one of the station's quieter sectors. As they sipped their drinks, a Martian whiskey for Edward, a shimmering Neotronian cocktail for Tyrus, conversation flowed easily between them. So, Edward said, leaning back in his chair, I've been meaning to ask, what's it like, being able to read minds? Tyrus's skin took on a thoughtful purple hue. It's complicated. On Neotron, it's normal. We all have varying degrees of telepathic ability, but out here, she gestured vaguely. It can be overwhelming. So many thoughts, emotions, secrets. I try to block it out as much as I can. Edward nodded, fascinated. Must be handy in negotiations, though. She smirked. You have no idea. But it can also be a burden, knowing things you're not supposed to know. Their eyes met, and Edward felt that familiar spark of electricity. He cleared his throat. Speaking of things we're not supposed to know, how are you really doing, Tyrus, with everything that's happened? Her skin darkened to a deep blue. I'm adapting. Some days are harder than others, but being on the Adventurer with you and the crew, it helps. Edward reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm glad. And I want you to know you're free to leave any time you want. You're not obligated to stay just because... Tyrus cut him off, her grip tightening. Edward, stop. I'm not staying out of obligation. I'm staying because I want to. Because... Her skin flushed a vibrant pink. Because of you. The air between them crackled with tension. Edward leaned in, his heart pounding. Tyrus mirrored his movement, her amber eyes flickering to his lips. Just as they were about to close the distance, a commotion at the bar shattered the moment. They turned to see Grok in a heated argument with a group of surly-looking Chronoans. Edward sighed, reluctantly pulling away. Duty calls? Rain check? Tyrus nodded, her skin still tinged pink. Rain check. They managed to defuse the situation before it turned violent, but the mood of the evening was broken. As they walked back to the ship, Edward couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and anticipation. Something was building between him and Tyrus, but the timing never seemed right. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The Adventurer took on a series of challenging jobs, each one pushing the crew to their limits. Through it all, Edward watched with pride as Tyrus integrated herself more fully into ship life. She proved invaluable during a tense negotiation with a group of Zygonian merchants, her telepathic abilities allowing her to discern their true intentions and secure a favorable deal for the Adventurer. During a particularly harrowing navigation through an asteroid field, Tyrus's quick thinking and precise calculations saved them from certain destruction. With each success, the crew's respect for her grew. Even Hank, still wary after the licking incident, begrudgingly admitted she was all right for a blue-skinned mind reader. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Cultural misunderstandings continued to crop up, often with humorous results. One evening, Edward found Tyrus in the cargo bay, surrounded by a mountain of pillows and blankets. Redecorating?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Tyrus looked up, her skin a confused yellow. "I'm preparing for the Lunar Alignment Festival. It's a major holiday on Neotron. We build nests and spend 3 days in meditation and reflection." Edward tried to keep a straight face. "That's great, but maybe we could move the festivities to your quarters. We kind of need the cargo bay for, cargo." Tyrus's face fell, her skin fading to a disappointed blue. "Oh, of course. I should have realized." Seeing her crestfallen expression, Edward felt a pang of guilt. "Hey, tell you what, why don't you teach us about this festival? We could all use a little reflection, and I'm sure the crew would love to learn more about your culture." Tyrus's skin brightened to a joyful orange. "Really? You do that?" Edward grinned. "Sure, just maybe we can build smaller nests?" The resulting Neotronian night became a favorite among the crew, with everyone piling into the common area with pillows and blankets, sharing stories and reflecting on their journey together. As the weeks passed, Edward found himself falling deeper for Tyrus. Her intelligence, her compassion, her ability to find wonder in the smallest things, it all captivated him. But he held back, unsure if she felt the same, worried about the complications their relationship could bring. Their dance of almost moments and interrupted encounters continued, building a tension that was becoming harder to ignore. Everything changed during a routine delivery to a remote mining colony on the planet Xerxes 4. What should have been a simple drop-off turned into a nightmare when they discovered the colony had been overtaken by a ruthless gang of space pirates, the same Scarlet Corsairs they'd encountered before. "Looks like Blackheart's got a score to settle," Grok growled as they observed the situation from orbit. Edward's jaw clenched. "We can't just leave those colonists to the Corsairs' mercy." Tyrus, her skin a determined green, spoke up. "I have an idea, but it's risky." As she outlined her plan, Edward felt a mix of admiration and fear. It was brilliant, but it put Tyrus in incredible danger. "No way," he said firmly. "It's too dangerous. We'll find another way." Tyrus's eyes flashed. "This is our best chance, Edward. I can do this. Trust me." Their gazes locked, a silent battle of wills. Finally, Edward nodded. "All right, but at the first sign of trouble, we're pulling you out. No arguments." The plan was audacious. Using her ability to change skin color, Tyrus would pose as a rare alien artifacts dealer, offering to sell the Corsairs a fake ancient weapon. While she distracted them, the rest of the crew would sneak in and free the hostages. Edward watched from the shadows as Tyrus sauntered into the pirate camp, her skin a shimmering silver that seemed to captivate the Corsairs. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to stay one step ahead of their suspicions, feeding them exactly what they wanted to hear. Everything was going according to plan until one of the pirates got handsy. Edward's blood boiled as he watched the brute grab Tyrus's arm, pulling her close. Without thinking, he burst from his hiding spot, fists flying. In the ensuing chaos, their cover was blown. Alarms blared as the Corsairs realized they'd been tricked. "Run!" Edward shouted, grabbing Tyrus's hand and pulling her towards the exit. They raced through the winding corridors of the mining facility, pirates hot on their heels. Laser fire sizzled past their heads as they dodged and weaved. Just as they reached the airlock where the adventurer was docked, a stray shot caught Edward in the shoulder. He stumbled, crying out in pain. Tyrus didn't hesitate. With strength that belied her slender frame, she hauled Edward to his feet and dragged him onto the ship. "Go! Go! Go!" she yelled to Grok, who was waiting at the controls. The adventurer blasted away from the station, narrowly escaping the Corsair's pursuit. As the adrenaline faded, Edward found himself in the med bay, Tyrus fussing over his wound. "That was incredibly stupid," she scolded, her skin a worried lavender. "You could have been killed." Edward winced as she applied a regenerative patch to his shoulder. "Couldn't let that Neanderthal put his hands on you." Tyrus's movement stilled. She looked at him, her amber eyes searching his face. "Edward." He reached up, cupping her cheek. "I'm tired of pretending, Tyrus. I'm falling in love with you. Have been for a while now." Her skin bloomed into a brilliant, joyous pink. "Oh, thank the stars. I thought I was the only one." This time, there were no interruptions. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home and embarking on a new adventure all at once. Because that's what life on the Adventurer was all about. Taking risks, defying the odds, and finding love in the most unexpected places. The days following their confession of love were a whirlwind of euphoria for Edward and Tyrus. The crew of the Adventurer, far from being surprised, seemed almost relieved that the palpable tension between their captain and the Neotronian princess had finally been resolved. "About damn time," Grok grumbled good-naturedly when they announced their relationship. The betting pool was getting out of hand. Edward raised an eyebrow. "Betting pool?" Hank, the crusty cook, cackled. "Yep. I had my money on you two getting together after a near-death experience. Looks like I win the pot." Tyrus's skin flushed a embarrassed but pleased pink. "I'm not sure whether to be flattered or mortified." As they swayed together, laughing at Edward's clumsy attempts to mimic the intricate Neotronian movements, he marveled at how lucky he was. Despite their differences, despite the challenges they faced, being with Tyrus felt right in a way nothing else ever had. But their bubble of happiness was about to be violently burst. It happened during a routine supply run to a bustling trading post. Edward and Tyrus were haggling with a Zygonian merchant over the price of rare engine parts when a commotion erupted at the far end of the marketplace. "Well, well," a booming voice cut through the chaos. "If it isn't my wayward daughter and her human pet." Tyrus froze, her skin paling to an ashen gray. Edward turned, his hand instinctively moving to the blaster at his hip. An imposing figure strode towards them, flanked by heavily armed guards. The man's blue skin was a shade darker than Tyrus's, marked with intricate silver tattoos that denoted his royal status. His amber eyes, so similar to Tyrus's, were cold and calculating. "Father," Tyrus whispered, her voice trembling. Edward stepped forward, placing himself between Tyrus and the Neotronian king. "Your Majesty," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" The king's lip curled in disdain. "I've come to reclaim what's mine, human. My daughter will be returning to Neotron immediately." Tyrus's hand gripped Edward's arm. "No," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I won't go back. You sold me, remember. You have no claim on me anymore." The king's eyes flashed dangerously. "You are a princess of Neotron. Your life is not your own to do with as you please. You have responsibilities, duties." "Duties," Edward interjected, unable to contain his anger, "like being sold into slavery to cover your gambling debts." The marketplace had gone eerily silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. The king's guards shifted restlessly, hands on their weapons. "You dare speak to me in such a manner?" the king snarled. "I should have you executed where you stand." Edward stood his ground. "You're welcome to try, but Tyrus is staying right here with me and our crew. She's family now." The king's face contorted with rage. Then, suddenly, a calculating look entered his eyes. "Very well," he said, his tone deceptively calm. "If you're so confident in your claim, perhaps you'd be willing to prove it, in the traditional Neotronian way." Tyrus gasped. "Father, no. You can't mean—" Edward laughed, pulling her close. "Let's go with flattered. It means they care." As they settled into their new dynamic, Edward marveled at how naturally Tyrus fit into his life. Her presence on the bridge brought a calm efficiency to their operations, her telepathic abilities proving invaluable during negotiations and potentially sticky situations. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Cultural misunderstandings continued to crop up, often with humorous results. One evening, Edward entered their shared quarters to find Tyrus engaged in what appeared to be an elaborate interpretive dance. Babe? What's happening here?" he asked, trying not to laugh. Tyrus paused mid-twirl, her skin a confused yellow. "I'm performing the traditional Neotronian courtship ritual. Is this not how humans express their romantic intentions?" Edward bit back a grin. "Not exactly. We usually go with dinner and a movie, maybe some flowers." "Oh." Tyrus's skin shifted to a disappointed blue. "I see. I just wanted to show you how much you mean to me in a way that felt authentic." Seeing her crestfallen expression, Edward's heart melted. He stepped forward, taking her hands in his. "Hey, I love that you wanted to share this with me. How about you teach me the steps? We can create our own hybrid courtship ritual." Tyrus's face lit up, her skin blooming into a joyful orange. "Really? You'd do that?" "Of course," Edward replied, pulling her close. "Just, maybe we keep this one private." I don't think the crew is ready for interpretive dance nights just yet. The challenge of Zarthu, the king finished. If this human truly believes he's worthy of a Neotronian princess, let him prove it in combat. Edward's mind raced. He had no idea what this challenge entailed, but he knew he couldn't back down. Not if it meant losing Tyrus. I accept, he said firmly. The king's lips curved into a cruel smile. Excellent. The challenge will take place tomorrow at dawn. I hope you're prepared to die for your infatuation, human. As the king and his entourage swept away, Tyrus turned to Edward, her skin a panicked swirl of colors. Edward, do you have any idea what you've just agreed to? He shook his head. Not really, but I know I'm not letting him take you away without a fight. Tyrus's expression softened, even as worry creased her brow. The challenge of Zarthu is an ancient Neotronian ritual. It's a test of not just physical prowess, but mental and emotional strength as well. It's incredibly dangerous. Edward cupped her face in his hands. Hey, look at me. We've faced down pirates, navigated asteroid fields, and survived your attempts at making Earth cuisine. This earned him a watery chuckle. Whatever this challenge throws at me, I can handle it, because I'm fighting for us. As they made their way back to the adventurer, Edward's mind whirled with preparations. He spent the night training with Grok, going over every combat technique he knew. Tyrus filled him in on the details of the challenge, her voice tight with worry. The first phase is physical combat, she explained. Hand to hand, no weapons. The second phase is a test of mental acuity, usually a series of complex puzzles or riddles. The final phase, it's different for everyone. It's designed to test your deepest fears and strongest convictions. Edward nodded grimly. Sounds like a typical Tuesday on the adventurer. Tyrus managed a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Edward, if you lose, he silenced her with a kiss. Not gonna happen. I didn't travel halfway across the galaxy just to lose you now. As dawn broke, they made their way to the designated arena, a massive, circular platform suspended over a misty chasm. The king and his entourage were already there, along with what seemed like half the trading post's population. Last chance to back out, human, the king sneered. Edward rolled his shoulders, fixing the Neotronian monarch with a steely gaze. Not a chance, your majesty. Let's dance. The first phase began without warning. The king's champion, a mountain of blue muscle, charged at Edward with a roar. What followed was a brutal test of strength and agility. Edward took his fair share of hits, but his years of scrapping in seedy spaceports served him well. With a well-timed feint and a devastating uppercut, he sent his opponent crashing to the ground. The crowd roared its approval, but Edward knew the real challenge was just beginning. The second phase presented him with a series of holographic puzzles, each more complex than the last. Edward's brow furrowed in concentration as he manipulated energy fields and rearranged star charts. More than once he felt his frustration mounting, but he pushed through, Tyrus's face in his mind's eye keeping him focused. As the final puzzle clicked into place, a hush fell over the arena. Edward looked up to see the king's face contorted with barely contained rage. "Impossible!" he hissed. "No human could—" "Final phase," Edward interrupted, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "Let's get this over with." The world around him shimmered and faded. Suddenly he found himself back on Earth in the shabby apartment where he'd grown up. His father's angry voice echoed from the next room, followed by the sound of breaking glass. "You'll never amount to anything, boy. You're nothing but a disappointment." Edward's heart raced. He knew this wasn't real, but the fear, the shame, it all felt so visceral. Then the scene shifted. He was on the bridge of the adventurer, but something was wrong. His crew lay motionless around him, victims of some unseen disaster. Tyrus stood before him, her skin a accusing red. "You failed us, Edward," she said, her voice cold. "You're not fit to be a captain. You're not fit to be with me." Edward squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself to breathe. "This isn't real," he muttered. "This isn't real." He focused on the truth, the family he'd found on the Adventurer, the love he shared with Tyrus. The fears began to lose their hold. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the arena. The crowd was silent, watching with bated breath. The king's face was a mask of disbelief. "How?" he demanded. "How did you overcome the final trial?" Edward straightened, meeting the king's gaze. "Because the reality I've built is stronger than any fear you can throw at me. Tyrus and I, our crew, that's my truth, and I won't let anyone, not even you, take that away." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The king's shoulders sagged, the fight seeming to drain out of him. "You have passed the challenge of Zarthu," he said, his voice heavy with reluctance. "By our laws, you have proven yourself worthy of my daughter's hand." Tyrus rushed forward, throwing her arms around Edward. Her skin was a kaleidoscope of joy, relief, and love. "I knew you could do it," she whispered. Edward held her tight, his heart soaring. Never doubted it for a second. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. News of a human passing the challenge of Zarthu spread like wildfire, and suddenly their wedding became an intergalactic event. They decided to hold the ceremony aboard the Adventurer, as it soared through the stunning Aurora Nebula. It was a perfect blend of their two worlds, the ship that had brought them together, surrounded by the cosmic beauty that had always called to both of them. As Edward stood at the makeshift altar, watching Tyrus glide towards him in a gown that seemed to be made of starlight itself, he felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was where he belonged. The ceremony was a beautiful chaos of Earth and Neotronian traditions. They exchanged rings and performed the intricate hand-binding ritual of Tyrus's people. Grok, officiating with surprising grace, declared them husband and wife by the laws of Earth, Neotron, and any other damn planet that matters. As they sealed their union with a kiss, the Adventurer erupted in cheers. Even the Neotronian king, still looking somewhat bemused by the whole affair, managed a grudging nod of approval. The reception that followed was one for the ages. Hank outdid himself with a feast that blended cuisine from a dozen worlds. The dance floor was a riot of color and movement as the crew taught Neotronian dignitaries how to do the electric slide. As the celebration wound down, Edward and Tyrus found a quiet moment alone in the observation deck. They stood hand in hand, watching the swirling colors of the nebula outside. "So," Edward said, a mischievous glint in his eye, "ready for our next adventure, Mrs. Reeves?" Tyrus's skin shimmered with happiness. "Always, Captain. Where to next?" Edward pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Wherever the stars take us, love, as long as we're together." And as the Adventurer soared on into the vast unknown, Edward knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they'd face them side by side. Because that's what life and love was all about. Dear intrepid listener, well, you've made it through our cosmic love story without succumbing to space madness. Congratulations. We hope you enjoyed this tale of interstellar romance, daring escapes, and the perils of cross-cultural dating. If you've learned anything from Edward and Tyrus's adventure, it's that love truly does conquer all, even grumpy Neotronian kings and the occasional band of space pirates. Remember, if you ever find yourself falling for a blue-skinned telepath or challenging alien royalty to ritualistic combat, you can always look back on this story for guidance. Just maybe don't try the whole licking as a greeting thing. Trust us, it doesn't go over well in most spaceports. As you return to your regular, presumably less exciting Earth life, we hope you'll carry a bit of the adventurer's spirit with you. And if you ever gaze up at the stars and see a flash of blue streaking across the sky, well, that's probably just space debris. But it could be Edward and Tyrus, off on their next escapade. Until our next cosmic caper, keep your blasters charged, your translate-o-matic updated, and your sense of humor firmly intact. After all, in this vast, weird universe of ours, it's the best defense against, well, everything. Safe travels. And may your own adventures be just as colorful, though perhaps with fewer life or death challenges.